I can't give you justice. This jury has given you what we as humans, the best we as humans can do.
At 6:52 a.m. in the early morning hours of North Carolina, a mother's voice broke during a 911 call. I don't know what's going on, but she's not here. But what if that call wasn't panic, but a performance? As search teams combed the trailer park and detectives listened closely, the truth was already in motion. A 5-year-old girl's life had been exchanged for $200. This is the untold story of Shaniah Davis, a case that leaves behind not just grief, but a deep sense of disappointment in the people who were supposed to protect her. To understand how a child could be betrayed so completely, we have to rewind back to a kindergarten smile, a pink scooter, and the night a debt was called due. Shaniah Nicole Davis entered the world on June 14, 2004, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, born to Bradley Lockhart and Antoinette Davis. She was remembered as cheerful, kind, and eager to help, equally happy dressing dolls as she was racing her scooter outside. Pink and yellow topped her list of favorites, and kindergarten at Morganton Road Elementary filled her days with small routines and big curiosity. For years, Shaniah's care had been handled by her father with support from his sister, Carrie Lockhart Davis. That changed in 2009 when custody was shifted after Antoinette was believed to be back on stable footing. Bradley later explained, paraphrased, that a request had been made sincerely, and a second chance seemed fair. Carrie, however, remained unconvinced, holding the view that neglect had long followed the mother like a shadow that refused to move on. By September of that year, 5-year-old Shaniah and her older brother Carl were settled into their mother's life at the Sleepy Hollow trailer park. The home, leased through Antoinette's sister Brenda, was already crowded. Space was divided carefully. Brenda, her partner Jeroy Smith, and their children took the rear bedroom, while Antoinette and her kids occupied the front. For a place named Sleepy Hollow, rest was in short supply, a quiet irony that history would not miss. Brenda had once been involved with a man named Mario Andret McNeel, known as Mono. Money from him had helped secure the trailer, and during that period his presence there had been frequent. Faces, routines, and entry points became familiar to him over time. Even boundaries, it seemed, were optional, an unsettling convenience in a story where too much access would later matter far more than it ever should have. At that point, Mono was living with a woman named April Autry, who was raising their 18-month-old daughter. The home they shared was on Washington Drive in Fayetteville, a short drive, about 7 minutes, south of the Sleepy Hollow trailer park. Distance, at least on a map, appeared reassuring, though it would later prove how misleading short drives can be. Although he was living with the mother of his child, communication with other women continued. On the night of November 9th into the early hours of November 10th, the evening was spent alone, fueled by alcohol, drugs, and poor judgment rather than company. Messages were sent widely, starting with Brenda, whose phone was unavailable, and then shifting to Tyshawn McLean, known as Tysa, another resident of Sleepy Hollow. An invitation was exchanged, but when he arrived shortly before 3 a.m., no one answered. A brief good night message followed, and moments later, attempts were redirected back toward Brenda, persistence without purpose, and irony without humor. Around 5:30 a.m., Brenda was awakened by what sounded like movement near the door. The concern was mentioned, but not investigated, and sleep resumed. About 30 minutes later, Antoinette entered the room asking if anyone had seen Shaniah. No one had. While Antoinette searched outside, Carl stated that Mono had been there earlier, a claim he confirmed when questioned. Calls and messages went unanswered, and April later confirmed Mono was not with her. When Antoinette returned, she reported no sign of her daughter nearby. Police contact was suggested but delayed. Outside, something unusual was noticed on the steps and railing, something that had not been there hours before. An unsettling detail that felt grimly symbolic.
Shortly after 6 a.m., Mono checked into the Comfort Inn and suites in Sanford, North Carolina, roughly an hour north of Fayetteville. He arrived alone, presented his ID, and was assigned room 201 under his name. Security cameras captured the entire process. Mono told the front desk clerk, Jacqueline Lee, that he was traveling with his daughter to see her mother in Virginia. Later footage showed him returning to his vehicle in the parking lot around 7:16 a.m., staying briefly, and then coming back inside carrying a child wrapped in a blue blanket. Jacqueline noticed the child's hair and would later recall it when seeing the Amber Alert for Shaniah. Additionally, a hotel guest, Seth Chambers, passed Mono near room 201 at 6:24 a.m. and saw him with the child in the hallway. During the morning shift change, Regina Baconic took over at the front desk. Mono appeared in the breakfast area alone, selecting a banana, juice, and a muffin, which he carried back to his room. Jacqueline pointed him out to Regina and explained the recent check-in. Security footage confirmed Mono walking toward the breakfast area at 6:36 a.m. and returning to his room with food in hand, a routine scene, but one tinted with dark irony considering what had just unfolded. Meanwhile, back at Sleepy Hollow, Brenda urged Antoinette to contact the authorities. At 6:52 a.m., Antoinette called the police, explaining, "I don't know what's happening, but she isn't here." The confusion and worry were evident, tempered with an uneasy hope that Shaniah had simply wandered off safely. Around 10 minutes later, officers arrived and began their search, employing tracking dogs and speaking with residents. Fayetteville police officer Elizabeth Culver noticed a substance on the front porch railings, which later tests identified. Antoinette had been attempting to clean the area with water, holding a cooking pot when the officer arrived. In the trash of Unit 1119, police discovered a blanket recognized by Antoinette and 𝐩𝐸, previously in the trailer living room. The item was collected by Jennifer Slish, a forensic technician, and entered as evidence, an everyday object now central to a situation that no one expected to unfold. Officer Culver spoke with Antoinette, Brenda, 𝐩𝐸, and Carl at the scene. Carl appeared preoccupied, often glancing at his aunt before answering. He recalled Shaniah going to bed but had no memory of her leaving the room. Later, he admitted to having seen Mono at the trailer that morning. Antoinette and Brenda were frequently distracted by their phones, making it difficult for Officer Culver to gather clear information. So her lieutenant decided they should be taken to the station for formal interviews. Meanwhile, Officer Culver and her partner, Daniel Suggs, went to the trailer park's main office to review security footage, hoping to spot a child moving around the property or any vehicles entering or leaving during the relevant time frame. At roughly 7:34 a.m., footage from the Comfort Inn and Suites captured Mono leaving room 201 carrying a child, heading to the elevator. By 7:35, he is seen exiting the hotel's side door and walking along the sidewalk, still holding the child. Matthew Argyle, a hotel maintenance worker, appeared on the video a minute later, outside the same door, picking up debris. He noticed Mono with the child, and thinking she was asleep, greeted him. Mono looked at him briefly, without responding, and continued toward the parking lot. Matthew felt uneasy and watched cautiously, pretending to be busy. Mono placed the child in the rear passenger seat, got into the driver's side, and began smoking while Matthew observed, silently noting that something seemed off. Mono then returned to the hotel's front entrance and spoke with Regina at the desk, requesting his security deposit back, explaining that he needed to continue his drive to Virginia with the child. Security cameras captured Regina handing him a receipt to sign as part of the deposit return process. Later, a housekeeper who cleaned room 201 brought Regina one or two small, clear plastic packets with white residue she had found, believed to be coke, an ironic little detail amidst the chaotic morning. Meanwhile, Matthew observed Mono leave the hotel, drive off, and turn onto the main road. Although he had a sense that something was off, he did not take action until the next day, when hotel staff noticed an Amber Alert and contacted law enforcement. Security footage confirmed 𝐂𝐤 leaving the front entrance at 7:40 a.m., entering his car, and turning left toward Highway 87. A simple act, yet one that would later carry significant weight. Phone records show that around 7:49 a.m., 𝐂𝐤 sent a brief text, "Hey," to Brenda, who was at the police station at the time. Earlier, at 6:53, she had sent him the same greeting, after learning from Carl that he had been at the trailer the previous night. By 8:22 a.m., cell tower data placed 𝐂𝐤 near the intersection of Highways 87, 24, and 27 in the Johnsonville and Barbecue area, tracking his movements with quiet precision. Between 8:33 and 9:48 a.m., a series of texts passed between Brenda and 𝐂𝐤, addressing his presence at her trailer, which he denied. The conversation concluded with Brenda instructing him not to contact her further, and 𝐂𝐤 questioning why her partner was messaging the mother of his child. Brenda did not inform authorities about the exchanges while at the station, choosing caution over assumption, and similarly withheld Carl's statement until more context was available. Forensic technician Jennifer Slish processed room 201 for evidence. The hotel manager explained that while the bedding remained unchanged, trash had been removed, and a towel had been taken before staff realized the situation. Among the collected items were 2 comforters from the beds, now preserved as evidence in a case that had transformed an ordinary hotel stay into a sobering chapter of a much larger story. Fayetteville Police Department. Captain Charles Kimball oversaw the coordination of efforts to locate Shaniah. Reviewing the hotel footage, authorities concluded that 𝐂𝐤 had likely been with her and that she was still alive at that time. After obtaining 𝐂𝐤's number from his mother, the police passed it to FBI Special Agent Frank Brostrom, who began examining the phone. Agent Brostrom noted that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children had already alerted the FBI. In such cases, the FBI promptly reaches out to local law enforcement to provide support. Brostrom coordinated with Sergeant Chris Corcione of Fayetteville PD and arrived at Sleepy Hollow on the afternoon of November 10th to assist in the search. 𝐂𝐤's phone records were analyzed by Special Agent Michael Sutton from the FBI Cellular Analysis Survey Team. Sutton reviewed the electronic data, drafted preliminary maps, and identified an initial search area along Highway 87 and Highway 27. Following these recommendations, local police concentrated their search from Spring Lake toward Sanford. Offers of assistance from volunteers and other agencies were quickly accepted, mobilizing a substantial search and rescue effort across the region. Once the hotel video became known, Brenda Davis and 𝐠 Smith informed police that Carl had seen 𝐂𝐤 at the trailer on the night Shaniah disappeared. Brenda also described seeing 𝐂𝐤 attempt to speak with Antoinette at their aunt's home. On the evening of November 12th, Brenda spoke with detectives again, shared details about her text exchanges with 𝐂𝐤, and allowed them to photograph her phone for records. Later that day, police located 𝐂𝐤, who agreed to come to the station for questioning. Authorities also found his Mitsubishi Galant parked at the Mount Sinai Apartments, away from his residence on Washington Drive. The vehicle was searched, with the trunk examined, and then towed to the police department. Forensic processing included collecting soil from the wheel wells and removing the brake and gas pedal covers for analysis, a methodical routine in a case where even the ordinary seemed to carry weighty significance. Starting around 9:30 p.m. on November 12th, multiple law enforcement officers interviewed 𝐂𝐤 in hopes of locating Shaniah. Though 2 days had passed since she went missing, authorities remained cautiously optimistic. 𝐂𝐤 was not handcuffed or formally detained. He was told the interview room door was unlocked and that he could leave at any time. He also kept his cell phone with him, continuing to send and receive messages during short breaks in questioning. During the interview, 𝐂𝐤 first acknowledged being at Sleepy Hollow shortly after midnight on November 10th driving his black Mitsubishi. Initially, he denied visiting Brenda's trailer, seeing Shaniah, knowing her identity, having her in his vehicle, or traveling to Sanford. When shown a photograph of himself at the hotel, he denied it was him. Confronted with the fact that he had signed into the hotel under his real name and provided his home address, Mano suggested he might have misplaced his ID. Eventually, he admitted being at the hotel with Shaniah. About 54 minutes in, Mano began recounting a text he believed came from Brenda, instructing him to pick Shaniah up from the porch. He claimed to have taken her to the hotel room, where he used coke. He further stated that he received a message from unknown individuals directing him to bring Shaniah to a dry cleaning location at the corner of Country Club Drive and Ramsey Street, and that he handed her over to people driving a gray Nissan Maxima. Agent Brostrom noted that the interview's tone shifted when Mano abruptly said he had been waiting for a call to come and kill her. Officers pressed for clarification, but he refused to elaborate. Phone records showed that Mano's interactions during this period were limited to text exchanges with Brenda. None of the communications supported his claims about someone waiting on the porch or instructions from unknown individuals, highlighting a stark contrast between his story and the documented evidence. At the conclusion of the interview, Mano was taken into custody for Shaniah's abduction. Later, when officers reviewed the recorded session, they noticed that during a break, Mano had made the sign of a cross, retrieved a key, knelt on the floor, and inserted it into an electrical socket, appearing to receive a shock. He then removed his shoes and repeated the action. The moment added a strange, almost darkly ironic pause to an already intense investigation. Meanwhile, investigators began questioning Antoinette's account after reconstructing a timeline of the events surrounding Shaniah's disappearance. She refused to cooperate at first and accused her boyfriend, Clarence 𝐀𝐫, of being responsible. Authorities investigated 𝐀𝐫, but quickly ruled him out once the Comfort Inn and Suites surveillance footage was examined. Eventually, Antoinette admitted to investigators, stating, "I gave her to him to cover $200. He was only supposed to have sex." Indeed, the admission was shocking. Mano had previously lent Antoinette $200 to help pay for food and a hotel room when she and her children were without stable housing. Contrary to some reports, the money was not linked to drugs. To repay the debt, she involved her 5-year-old daughter in the scheme, a devastating and tragic decision that underscored the gravity of the situation. Adding further complexity, Antoinette was pregnant at the time. She was arrested and charged with human trafficking, but released on a $51,000 bond. Meanwhile, search efforts for Shaniah continued extensively along Highway 87, with authorities hoping for a breakthrough. On the morning of November 13th, Investigator Kimball of Fayetteville PD met with District Attorney Ed Grannis to discuss multiple cases, including Shaniah's. During their conversation, Grannis mentioned that defense attorney Alan Rogers might have information relevant to the case and indicated he would be contacting him. Rogers had accompanied Mano during his first court appearance on the kidnapping charge, and Investigator Kimball understood that Rogers was representing Mano. The following day, Investigator Kimball received a call from attorney Coy Brewer. Brewer advised him to search for green porta-potties along Highway 87. On November 15th, Kimball called Rogers to clarify the information. Rogers, who was traveling at the time, said he would speak with his client and follow up later. He later recommended focusing on areas where deer had been processed along Highway 87 between Spring Lake and Sanford. When Kimball called again for further details, Rogers responded, "That's all my guy remembers." Rogers would later deny in court ever referring to Mano as my guy. Shaniah was not located that day, and search efforts resumed the next morning. A company from Sanford, training K-9 officers from the Virgin Islands, volunteered to assist. Around 1 p.m., one of the officers and a trained dog discovered Shaniah in a wooded area partially beneath a log, near deer carcasses close to the intersection of Highway 87 and Walker Road. At the time, she was dressed in an oversized black sweatshirt and underwear. A heartbreaking and grimly ironic scene given the ongoing search. On November 19, 2009, 𝐀𝐫𝐜𝐬 was formally charged with first-degree homicide. One officer recounted, "We got a tip from someone in the parking lot who said they heard on the news that the suspect had admitted to harming the child and leaving her among deer remains and trash. Driving through earlier, we had noticed a strong odor, so we returned to investigate. Sure enough, there were deer carcasses and trash, and the Virgin Islands officers and their dogs indicated the exact spot where she was found. It's terrible. There's no good way to put it. I'm just relieved that we were able to locate her." On July 5, 2011, a Cumberland County grand jury formally indicted 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬 on multiple counts, including first-degree homicide, first-degree kidnapping, and various charges related to sexual offenses involving Shaniah. 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬 filed pretrial motions seeking to block the death penalty under North Carolina's Racial Justice Act and attempting to suppress his interview statements. He also claimed that the state had agreed not to pursue the death penalty in exchange for information on Shaniah's location. All motions were denied, as no such agreement had existed, reflecting a misunderstanding between 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬 and his attorney. The following day, July 6, 2011, Antoinette Davis was rearrested and additionally charged with first-degree homicide alongside her existing charges. She was denied bond on the homicide charge, and bonds totaling $1.5 million were set for her remaining charges. On April 8, 2013, 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬 was offered a plea deal to admit guilt to first-degree homicide in exchange for life imprisonment without parole instead of facing a potential death sentence. After consideration, he declined the offer and chose to proceed to trial. During the trial, Deputy Chief Medical Examiner Thomas Clark described performing Shaniah Davis's autopsy on November 17, 2009. He noted a small bruise on the left side of her face, injuries to her private area, and 2 abrasions on her upper thighs. Dr. Clark explained that abrasions occur when the outer skin layer is scraped off by a blunt object, and the 2 linear marks on Shaniah's inner thighs aligned with the waistband of her underwear. He identified injuries consistent with sexual abuse and collected several hairs during the external examination. Examination of her lungs revealed edema, chronic bronchitis, and focal intra-alveolar hemorrhage. Dr. Clark concluded that the most probable cause of death was airway obstruction, or asphyxiation. Evidence collected from Shaniah included blood, hairs, and other bodily fluids from her clothing, the blanket recovered from the trash, and bedding from the Comfort Inn and suites. DNA testing linked these materials to both Shaniah and 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬. Soil samples taken from the roadside near where Shaniah was found, from the body recovery site, and from the gas pedal of 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬's Mitsubishi Galant all contained the same garnet compound. Additionally, 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬's cell phone records placed him at the location connected to the crime. On May 23, 2013, a jury found Mario 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐬, Andre McNeel, guilty of first-degree homicide, determining that the killing was committed with malice, premeditation, and deliberation. He was also convicted on all remaining charges except for the count of sexual abuse of a child by an adult offender. During the subsequent capital sentencing phase, Shaniah's father and half-sister appeared as impact witnesses, providing testimony about the devastating effect of her loss on the family. Shaniah's father, Bradley Lockhart, shared that he had met Antoinette at a social event and had a brief relationship with her, learning of her pregnancy shortly before Shaniah was born. For nearly 2 years after her birth, Shaniah lived with her mother's family, though Bradley maintained frequent contact, picking her up for weekend visits. Around late 2006 or early 2007, Bradley purchased a sizable home in Fayetteville and Shaniah moved in with him and his 4 other children. During this period, she remained in regular contact with her mother. Bradley described Shaniah as being close with him and her siblings, enjoying both dress-up games in plastic heels and more active pursuits, like basketball with her younger brother and riding her scooter. She also loved singing and aspired to join the church children's choir. In October 2009, Shaniah returned to live with her mother, but Bradley still spoke with her on the phone 4 to 5 times per week while traveling for work. He testified that her loss has been one of the most painful experiences of his life, causing ongoing difficulty sleeping, stress-related health issues, including 2 collapsed lungs, and persistent questions about what he might have done differently. Cheyenne Lockhart, Shaniah's 21-year-old half-sister, described her as a little mini-me who shadowed her everywhere. She recalled Shaniah as bubbly, playful, and full of jokes, with a caring nature that included expressing love frequently. Cheyenne shared that Shaniah's death left a lasting pain, thinking of her every day and feeling the void her absence created in the family's life. On May 29, 2013, the jury recommended that Mono receive the death penalty, and the trial court followed that recommendation. He was sentenced to death for first-degree homicide and received in consecutive prison terms, totaling 705 to 886 months for the remaining charges.
On October 18, 2013, Antoinette Davis entered Alford pleas for second-degree homicide, human trafficking, first-degree kidnapping, and additional charges related to the sexual abuse of her daughter. She was sentenced to 210 to 261 months in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2027. As part of the plea agreement, the first-degree sexual abuse charge was dismissed. An Alford plea allows a defendant to maintain innocence while acknowledging that evidence could result in a conviction. Antoinette addressed Shaniah's father, stating, "I want to say I did the best I could with my children. I never said I was a perfect mother, but I was a good mother. I did what I had to provide for them. I did what I had to make sure they were all right. I didn't have help from anybody." Superior Court Judge Jim Ammons sharply disagreed, telling Antoinette, "You could have saved your daughter's life, and you did not. You had the time, the opportunity, and the means to save Shaniah's life, and you did not. You are not a good mother. This did not have to happen." He also required her to register as an offender for 30 years and recommended psychological counseling while incarcerated. Bradley Lockhart expressed that, despite ongoing grief, he had forgiven Antoinette long ago and believed Shaniah had as well. He addressed her directly, saying, "Maybe you can take this time and dig deep within you and help others by sharing your story." Shaniah's calling hours took place on November 21st, 2009, at Roger and Brees Funeral Home, followed by her funeral service the next day at Manna Church, officiated by Reverend Johnny C. Davis. My take on this case: it happened because a child was placed in an unsafe environment and trust was misplaced. Red flags like prior concerns about the mother's choices and the presence of dangerous adults were ignored. Lack of communication between family and authorities allowed warning signs to go unnoticed. Financial and personal pressures influenced poor decisions that directly endangered Shaniah. Early intervention from social services might have prevented the tragedy. Regular check-ins and monitoring of at-risk children are crucial. Education for parents about safe caregiving and boundaries could reduce risk. Stronger community awareness and reporting systems can help protect vulnerable children in the future. If you like this video and want to see more real stories, subscribe now. We cover cases like Shaniah's and many others you won't want to miss.